Before I begin, first of all, wanted to thank Marianne for that very moving testimony. It is no easy thing to be a human being. And the fact that we would make that gratuitously even more painful is very difficult to recognize. This forum, by the way, has been extraordinary, and I want to thank the people that put it together. I can hardly believe that I have been here this many hours. It has been so engaging. So I thank you for that. Spirituality, conventionally defined, stresses commitment. Commitment, however, must include the option of separation if it is a free act or gift. There are three issues to clarify in addressing this question. First, commitment, vow, and relationship. Second, marriage as a sacrament. And thirdly, marriage and divorce. First, contract, vow, and relationship. In the beginning, marital commitment was normed by contract. Parents determined the durability and the content of the marriage, and this was specified in an oral or written contract. The stability of the partners was codified with a gravity as stringent as a modern-day financial investment. A wife was obliged to conform and to submit. Only the husband could divorce, so immense social pressure compelled the wife to remain a married woman. And a woman, in any case, had little choice. She was unlikely to be formally educated. Even more rarely was a woman given the opportunity for employment in her own right. A divorced woman, furthermore, was obliged to evacuate the home and its belongings and all children, since only a man could possess such assets. The pressure on a wife to conform was severe. So pleasing a husband, even an abusive husband, was the only way to avoid poverty, social disgrace, and isolation. A divorced woman was often unwelcome in returning to her father's home. In such a situation, a woman's right to divorce and to equality of ownership was an unreachable grace. Later, the vow became the focus of the commitment in a marital relationship. At the present moment, the durability and content of a marriage are measured by the couple's capacity for marital love. And this is not a concession to a lesser standard, but an application of biblical norms and ideals. The church, nonetheless, stresses sexual intercourse as more constitutive of a marriage than love. An example might show this. It is possible at the present time for Catholics to divorce civilly and to marry a second time and to be accepted formally by the church, as long as there is no sexual intercourse in the second marriage. This is an instance of offering a couple good news and bad news together. In allowing, though, such an option, the official church reveals, almost in spite of itself, that it is more concerned with sexual intercourse than with the integrity of the vows or the primacy of the relationship, indeed, even of love itself, because that first marriage that I just referred to in the example above is a total juridical artifact, an abstraction, indeed a fiction. The first couple do not have love for each other, do not support each other, or offer each other comfort or companionship. And yet, they are considered married. Yet, all of these things occur in the second marriage, of course, lacking sexual intercourse. In place, we have a fiction built on canonical imagination. Yet, in this second marriage, everything we understand of marriage occurs except sexual love. And this is absent not by a choice of the couple or a biological inevitability, but by a canonical impediment. The church accepts, in place of that marriage, an arrangement that once had a vow and sexual experience, but now has nothing, and yet the church considers them married. The second relationship has everything except a sexual relationship, which is removed by pressure of the church. So, the church holds a couple, in this instance, to a vow that cannot be fulfilled, and insists in fidelity to a relationship in which love is not a reality. Had the church allowed collegial dialogue with lay Catholics and with the parties involved, this could never have occurred. Second point, marriage as a sacrament. Why did it take so long to define marriage as a sacrament? The delay, some 12 centuries, is all the more surprising when we consider the long biblical tradition in both testaments in its favor. Yet the Catholic Church does not refer to marriage as a sacrament until the 12th century. This prolonged reticence is traceable to three characteristics. First, marriage entails a considerable financial arrangement on all levels of life. Second, marriage existed long before Christianity. And thirdly, marriage involves a sexual relationship. The third point is especially telling in the centuries of Platonic influence with its negative evaluation of physical life and the body. Perhaps also the denial of sacramentality to marriage is built on the fact that no sacrament should be that much fun. Third, marriage and divorce. The Roman Empire focused on the couple rather than principles in determining marriage and divorce. A couple was married if they lived together for a year, and divorced if they chose to live apart for a year. That was it. No judicial judgments or interference. Divorce runs as a theme, as we know, through the Hebrew Bible, and the Christian Bible also finds divorce acceptable in cases of adultery and intrusion into the inner or religious life of a spouse. Western Christianity permitted divorce, as the Eastern Church still does. When the Eastern Church broke from Rome in the early second millennium, the Western Church then prohibited divorce stringently. The history and complexity of discerning when a couple is obliged to remain married or to separate, and whether divorce or annulment is in order, are issues that really are involved in church teaching without the consideration of the couple. It is worth considering whether marriage itself, namely the couple together, are the ones that create its sacramentality. If the couple is, as Catholic teaching came to say, the minister of the sacrament, then should not their voice and their collegial assessment of their relationship be honored? Duns Scotus, the 13th century philosopher, was the first to consider that it was not the priest, but the couple that was the minister of the sacrament. Martin Luther was troubled by divorce in any instance, but he did maintain that it must be acceptable in certain cases. He reached that conclusion because if the Gospels and the letters of Paul allow divorce, then his own dislike of that as an option could not be normative in church life. Luther believed, however, that the Catholic Church made matters worse by granting annulments. Annulment, after all, he argued, did not preserve the church from making divorce acceptable, but it went directly against the words of Jesus that no one should ever sever what God had put together. Annulments are granted, furthermore, Luther said, not on moral grounds, but on legal technicalities. Today, vast numbers of Catholics, even those desiring divorce, do not find credible a declaration of annulment that there never was a marriage. Years of love and children are testimony that a marriage did exist, whatever the reason for its non-permanence. John Calvin affirmed Luther's conclusion that marriage is not a sacrament. God's blessing given in Genesis on marriage, he added, did not make it a sacrament in the Christian church. Anglicans prohibited divorce until the 19th century, but theologians led the way to acceptance of divorce in cases of adultery, desertion, and cruelty. The Council of Trent did not take up a consideration of marriage until its last session in 1563. And it declared marriage then a sacrament and stated that the Church regulates it and Catholics are obliged to conform. The Napoleonic Code of 1792 made civil marriage, and not a religious ceremony, obligatory for all French citizens, and decreed that religious marriage could no longer be sufficient. Many countries of Europe follow this norm even now. Since the 13th century, since the 20th century, there has been a profound shift in our understanding of marriage. We have moved from a central concern with social order to a focus on the individuals in the marriage. And we have moved from parental approval to personal love. No longer is the family of origin the agent primarily charged with the education of children born into it, or is no longer is the pursuit of the occupation the children will follow dependent on the parents. The central concern of marriage, then, has moved from children to personal fulfillment and growth. Development in the personal relationship is more important than anything else. And in this dynamic, annulments from church courts are seen as intrusive, ill-informed, and unhelpful. There has been a substantial development over the last century and a half in the spirituality of marriage. The very indissolubility of marriage derives from the bonding of the spouses rather than from church teaching. And this union is rooted in their life together rather than in the vow or the contract. To conclude, the Second Vatican Council called for a collegial church, and Pope Francis has renewed this focus. Collegiality, however, has to mean more than collaboration in church decisions. In marriage, it is found in the collaborative witness of the married couple about their own marriage. The witness in the marriage has to be the one who concludes whether the marriage is endurable and what steps have to be taken to move from marriage to separation. The culture of human rights in this last century and a half has now stressed not only human rights, but democracy and due process. These are accepted today as normative, and the whole pastoral mission of the Church must be built on those principles for it to be truly pastoral and accepted. So Vatican II moved us from a church of clerical concerns, which is what we still have in marriage in many ways, and even into church monarchies, into inclusivity instead of that, and the centrality that all the people of God recognize as the heart of the marriage. The church, therefore, is obliged to see itself looking at both testaments as a shepherd rather than a watchdog.